Well, before we go any farther, I forgot to ask you, should I have taken my dildo down before we
Oh
started?
my God. He has a suction cup pink dildo on his bookshelf. Oh my
This is,
goodness. You are the best.
Welcome to Sex and the Solo Girl. Join your host, her inner circle, and expert guests weekly for chats about dating, secure attachment, the solo lifestyle, doing relationships differently, and of course, sex. And here's your host, Janice Formichella.
Have I got a treat for you this week? Today, we welcome Dr. Darrel Ray to the Sex and the Solo Girl Nation. We are discussing one of the most purely natural topics, and that is masturbation. Today's chat is funny, scientific, and believe it or not, even a bit sexy. Dr. Ray is an organizational psychologist and the founder of, listen to this, everyone, Recovering from Religion, a nonprofit network of volunteers, online support groups, and resources for those transitioning away from religious belief. He's also the founder of the Secular Therapy Project, which connects clients with secular, evidence-based mental health professionals. Dr. Ray now focuses and speaks on human sexuality from a secular perspective. And as you will see, one of his favorite topics is masturbation and sexuality through one's lifetime. And that is what we are going to talk about today. He has so much to share with us. We had just such a fun time together. Make sure to go look up Recovering from Religion and go and connect with Dr. Ray on LinkedIn if you'd like to let him know how much you enjoyed this episode. And with that, here we have Masturbation with Dr. Ray. Welcome, Dr. Ray, to the show. Thanks for being here.
Glad to join you, Janice. This is going to be fun, I think. Very few people talk about this, so we're going to be some of the first.
Yeah, undoubtedly fun. And yes, I came across your work / got introduced to you through the recent Shameless Sexuality Conference organized by Divorcing Religion and Janice Selby, who is a friend of mine and a fellow Janice. She's also been on the podcast before. And I saw the title of your talk, which was
Masturbation, porn, and your sex life.
Yes. So, and the name of the talk was Masturbation, Porn, and Your Sex Life. I didn't really know what to expect. And then lo and behold, I get on this live presentation that is pretty much all about masturbation and the history of masturbation and the health benefits of masturbation. And I text multiple friends whilst I was watching saying that I was in this talk and that it was just completely rocking my world. And it did. And I could not wait to have you on Sex and the Solo Girl, Dr. Ray. So thanks for being here again.
Good. Glad you enjoyed it. I get lots of comments about that talk.
Oh, I mean, it was not only completely riveting with information that you, like you just said, you don't ever see people talking about. I mean, who's talking about the history of masturbation? You're also very funny, great information. You obviously love what you do. And I mean, it was great. You had everybody, like completely at the palm of your hand too. Everyone was just loving life during that talk. So I guess this leads well into, I mean, we've just already in the 1 minute I've been talking have mentioned that this is a topic not often covered. And, especially in a public space, especially an academic. How did you come to specifically study masturbation?
Well, it goes back to when I was 12 years old and my mother caught me masturbating.
You started a personal study, some research. I would say you started researching when you were 12.
I was in the privacy of my own bedroom in my own bed when my mother came barging in and caught me masturbating. And she sat down beside me. I have very religious parents, but they were also pretty considerate and in some ways liberal for that time. This is would have been 1962. I'm dating myself a little bit. But she sat down on my bed, patted me on the shoulder and says, "That's all right, Darrel. you won't do it when you get married.
Oh, for crying out loud.
And you know what I found out? She was half right.
Okay.
It was all right, but I also did it when I was married.
Okay,
so.
gotcha. It was all right. And
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, but over the years, I went through, I got my degree in anthropology and sociology. Part of my ending my senior thesis I did on the Havasupai tribe in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. I had recently got married to my wife at the time, and we took our honeymoon to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Nobody else does that, I'll tell you. Mm-hmm. But it was beautiful. It's a gorgeous place in the bottom. But I was there to study the Havasupai Native Americans, and I'd done all my research about who they were and what their practices and all. But sex was a very interesting part of that. I didn't specifically talk about or research masturbation because even anthropologists didn't have access to this information, didn't even try to study. It's pretty hard to get information on people's masturbatory practices in any culture because the Victorian, the puritanical attitudes about sex are in anthropologists too, and even psychologists and sociologists. So it's not easy to find it. But anyway, what I found was an entire people who did not practice the same kind of sexuality that I practiced as a good Christian boy at the time. So that opened my eyes to many things. And then later I became exposed to Dr. Albert Ellis, the founder of cognitive behavioral therapy. At the time, it was known as rational emotive therapy. But he's also a sex therapist. I went to a training with him. I went to several trainings with him over the years. I consider him my mentor. And look up Dr. Albert Ellis sometime. If you don't know who he is, he's like the godfather of all things cognitive behavioral. But he talked about masturbation. I'd never heard anybody openly. It's in an audience at a university of maybe 300 or 400 people. I've never seen anybody talk about masturbation so freely and openly. And then he started talking about clients who were scared to death of going to hell because they masturbated 5 times a day or something. And I thought, ooh, that sounds like me. Only 5 times a day? So at that moment, the lid came off of whatever reticence I had about masturbation, because I was seeing a world-famous psychologist, founder of an entire school of psychology, talking openly about it. And he was also a world-famous sex therapist. A lot of people don't remember him for his sex therapy work. They remember him for his cognitive behavioral work. But I remember him for both. And that really kicked it off when I started, I won't say systematically studying, but just paying attention to how people responded to the notion of masturbation. And then when I became a clinical psychologist, I got my doctorate and then went on into practice for a while. I had people coming to me, scared about masturbating or worried that their porn addiction was going to send them to hell or whatever. It was eye-opening.
Oh my God.
It was well, yeah, and you can look my talk up on the myth of sex addiction or porn addiction if you want to.
And maybe we can do an episode on that in the future. I'm not sure if you knew, I was raised LDS, and these are big topics in our culture.
Oh,
and so, yeah,
absolutely.
maybe we will do, further content on that.
Sure, I'm glad to. I'm always glad to talk about that kind of thing, because my goal in life, I'm 74 years old, soon to be 75, and my goal in life is to get people to start feeling comfortable in their own sex and sexuality, no matter what their age. Every age group has got issues with their sex and sexuality. So let's get over them. And a lot of them are deeply embedded in our cultural training and religious training, of course. So if you're an ex-Mormon, I can almost predict some of the things that you have concerns about. And it's not the same as a Jehovah's Witness. Mm-hmm. It's not the same as an ex-Muslim, for example. Each has their own kind of unique flavor, I guess you could say, of guilt and shame.
Trauma and guilt and shame and oppression. Yeah. I think it might be, somewhat easy to trace or explain why masturbation, talking about it, especially, and portraying it, has become taboo and shameful. However, something that we don't really talk about as much, which I loved about your talk, is that there have been previous cultures that either encouraged it or talked openly about it, perhaps used it in some of their lore. Can you tell us about some of that? That was a really fun part of your presentation. And I do think it's helpful for people to know that certain things involving sexuality, relationships, solo sexuality are more contemporarily stigmatized, and it's
Right,
really cool
right.
to see that these things were considered natural and celebrated before. So tell us about some of those.
Well, it must have been seen as natural and celebrated in Egypt about 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, because we have detailed recordings of how Anubis, one of the gods of Egypt, I'm drawing a blank on his other name there. Anyway, he masturbated. I shouldn't say he, because he was a blend of male and female, but he masturbated the world into existence. It's a creation story. And the very basis of the creation story is masturbation. So if they can talk that openly about their gods masturbating, and of course we've got myths and stories from places like ancient Greece. We have frescoes on the sides of temples in India that clearly show copulatory and masturbatory behavior going on. We also know that there are cultures, there's a number of cultures in the South Pacific and around the world where masturbation is just seen as a part of who you are. And you're not condemned for it, and there's no puritanical God looking over your shoulder while you're jacking off. So what we know is,
you on when you're jacking off.
Yeah, well, in Egypt they might be really rooting on. And then when you look at all the different all the evidence of pornography going back 35,000 years or more. I mean, Venus, the little Venus statuette with incredibly enlarged breasts and hips. Somebody was looking at that and masturbating. It's pretty clear. Well, that's not, the anthropologists will say, oh, it's just a fertility symbol.
Right,
yeah, it's a fertility symbol while you're masturbating.
I didn't ever think of that before. I mean, I'm very, very familiar with the piece of art that you're referring to.
Right.
And you just think this because it's so detailed and suggestive, and also some people suggest that it could be the male gaze perspective.
You're familiar with one statue. It's become quite famous, but there are thousands of those. It's not just one. It's very, very common to find these in Stone Age sites, basically, if you will. And then you look at the frescoes on Pompeii. I mean, remember Pompeii was destroyed by the volcano. Etna, I believe it was Etna when it blew up, and so was Herculaneum. And as they excavate, they find all this pornography on the sides of all the buildings, all sorts of pornography there. Then you look at India and all the frescoes that are on there, or carvings that are on the side of temples. They're people having sex doggy style. I mean,
and as we know, Sodom and Gomorrah, they had gay sex depicted, which is why they were blown up. That's what I was told growing up. That's
what they tried to tell us. Yeah, I don't buy it quite.
So silly.
But we have so much evidence that pornography was out there. Well, what is pornography used for? It's for masturbation. You're probably, back in those days, you're probably not looking at the porn while you're fucking somebody else. You might have been. I don't care if you do or not. But that wasn't. It's just great evidence that masturbation must have been very common.
Oh, interesting.
And very well respected, or not, if not respected, at least ignored.
Understood. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Or taken for granted, should we say?
Taken for granted. Yeah. It's like breathing. It's eating.
It is.
And there were laws. There's places like Hawaii, before contact with the Western world, with the rest of the world rather, where sexual behavior was just no big deal. Everybody did it. Masturbation was fine. Having sex with somebody you weren't married to was fine, but don't eat the wrong fruit. Because certain fruits are reserved only for royalty.
My goodness.
And you can literally get your head cut off for eating the wrong fruit.
Is there a fruit that we still eat today that's on this list?
Probably.
Okay, cool.
I'm not an expert on that side. I just know that the food prohibitions, the food taboos, were far more important to Hawaiian society than sexual taboos. The one sexual taboo was among royalty. Marriage was generally reserved for royalty.
Oh, cool.
So there wasn't a lot of emphasis on getting married. That doesn't mean people weren't having families, obviously, and weren't cohabiting, but you didn't have to go to a marriage ceremony to be a good Hawaiian.
Well, I approve of that, definitely. That's my belief about marriage. Dr. Ray, we've just now talked about several instances of depictions of masturbation or pornographic imagery that might have been used to aid in it. It feels like a lot of what we've mentioned has to do with male masturbation. Can you speak at all to female masturbation and attitudes about it or depictions of it over time or through history?
Well, let's just begin here. Let's all agree that women do not masturbate. And then we can just ignore it and move on. And that's kind of the way academia was. Until the late 1800s, people knew men masturbated.
Right.
They didn't admit or even suspect that women masturbated. Now we have evidence, and there's evidence of things like lesbian women being together as a married couple. So if you've got that, you probably also got masturbation. There's probably a lot of other things. There's myths about female masturbation, but what happened was the puritanical culture that came with the Reformation in the early 1500s, when Martin Luther rebelled against the Catholic Church. Well, that led down a path. The Catholic Church is pretty darn puritanical itself, but that led to, on the other side, the Protestant church started getting more and more puritanical until you get literally the Puritans in 1648 or so, who actually took over England. At one point in time, the Puritans killed the king, Charles I, lopped off his head, and then took over England. Well, that instituted a very restrictive sexuality during that period. And during that same period, many people left England and came to the United States with those puritanical ideas. Some friends of mine, I have lots of good friends in Australia, and they say Australia got all the prisoners, and the United States got all the perverts, Puritans, and they think they got the better deal. Because that puritanical belief structure came over here, and then within that framework they were able to condemn women, for whatever they were going to do and burn them at the stake. Then that's pretty radical, if you will. But why were they burning women? Because women were expressing sexuality in ways that was not approved by the puritanical ethos at that particular time. Now, whether they were caught masturbating or not, I can guarantee you that if a woman was caught masturbating, she would be a witch.
Oh, my God.
She would be concerned. She would be condemned. He would be convicted of witchcraft. And of course, there are myths coming out of the Middle Ages and later about women masturbating. Now, let me tell you something you have never seen or heard before.
Please.
And my partner discovered this. My partner is very sexually open and sexually liberated, of course. But she found something called Sheila Nagig. Sheila Nagig.
I actually know about this.
Oh, okay, you do.
No, but
okay,
my listeners won't. Please go on.
Okay. Well, they're like statues or reliefs on churches in Ireland. Appears to have started in Ireland, and there are hundreds of them, and they're almost all female sexual expressions. The most famous one, my partner went to England. They're in England too. My partner went to England just to see the Sheila Nagig about 2 months ago. She flew all the way to England. Her main goal was to see this. It's in a little tiny church out in the middle of nowhere in England, and it's a woman with her legs spread open,
Yep.
exposing her clit and holding her
Yeah,
clit.
holding it open. Yes.
Holding
I
it
do
open.
some goddess worship or goddess study, and so that's why I'm familiar with this.
Okay.
But you are right. Probably most of the listeners will not be, and it is very graphic.
And so why are people doing that?
Mm-hmm.
And there are hundreds and hundreds of them. And they started in Ireland, went to England, and you can find them all over Europe, especially from France on into Central Europe. So we don't know what it was meant or what it was about, but it's clearly masturbatory.
Yeah.
And it's female masturbatory.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of answers your question, I think, a little bit, if you will.
And you are right. This goes to show that this was something that was accepted. And I also, considering that a lot of people consider her image now to be some sort of, deity or goddess representation, that also goes to show, this was something that was thought to be a powerful thing, at the very least, that a powerful woman would do. I mean, enough so that she's on a church. Nobody
knows these for sure. They think the reason they were put on there, because they had gargoyles and other scary things around. These gargoyles that were on church and cathedrals, they were designed to keep the evil spirits away. Well, the other thing is the evil spirits apparently were scared of female genitals. And that was a way of scaring the spirits away as well. Now, you mentioned that it may have been accepted. I'm not sure I would go that far. I'm not sure it was. I'm not sure female masturbation was accepted or not, but it sure shows that was known.
Okay.
And that at some level it was being used, whether for good or ill. I don't know, but we don't really know why, as I've said before. But I do want to jump fast forward past that phase in history to the 1800s when Dr. Kellogg comes along, and he thinks that mental illness. He wasn't a very good psychologist, by the way. He was a medical doctor, but even then, I wonder. He felt that masturbation led to mental illness. And so in order to save boys and girls, he wanted to reduce or eliminate masturbation and condemned and shamed boys and girls for masturbating. His way of doing that, though, was to find ways of reducing their desire by circumcising them. So he advocated, get this, before about 1880, nobody was circumcising in the United States.
Yeah.
Before 1880, nobody was circumcising in Europe and still don't. Mm-hmm. But at about 1880, Dr. Kellogg started putting this propaganda out that boys who masturbate too much are going to go mentally ill.
Oh, my God.
And girls, too. And so he advocated circumcision of boys and girls. And I think it's important to remember, he was cutting the genitals of girls as well as boys. Mm-hmm. However, it stopped somewhere in the late 1890s. That the girls' side of it seemed to die out, but the boys' side did not. It only got worse.
And as far as Dr. Kellogg, who, yes, related with the Kellogg company that we all know today, and the story is also about Kellogg's Kellogg's cornflakes, is also that he thought it was a health food that he actually discovered mistakenly, from what I understand. But we won't get into the story of Dr. Kellogg right now. Dr. Ray mentioned his belief that masturbation could lead to mental illness. We now know that that is not the case. And after our commercial break, everybody must stay tuned, because we're going to actually be not only debunking that belief, but talking about the health benefits of masturbation. But before we have our commercial break, Dr. Ray, something that I enjoyed about your presentation and that I'm looking forward to hearing you tell my audience about is, who masturbates?
Who? Most any mammal masturbates.
Love it.
Especially every primate. I don't think there's a primate that we haven't found masturbating at one point in time. And they do it in public. I mean, the bonobo apes can be seen masturbating as they're watching two other bonobo chimps having sex.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So if you think about it, they're voyeuristic, or they're using their their buddies as porn stars.
Hell yeah, I love that because I'm a exhibitionist to a certain extent, and so that I'm like, yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of almost every monkey species we know of masturbates. Every chimp, and all the 5 great apes all masturbate. And that would include humans, gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobo apes, and not gibbons. I can't anyway. My
lots
old
of monkeys
timers
out there jerking off.
Yeah, lots of monkeys jerking off. So yeah, everybody masturbates, and that's why humans should realize they're very normal in wanting to masturbate, have a personal sexy time with themselves.
And this includes female primates as well.
Oh, absolutely. You can. There are
I know that they do, but this has been studied and observed and recorded over time. Okay.
Right.
Well,
yep.
and also,
if you don't believe me, just how many of you have had your dog try to hump you?
So true. It's so cringy. And yes, of course, it is important to, understand that mammals, primates, not only engage in self-satisfying behavior, but polyamorous behavior, homosexual behavior. And I think this is important to know that this is natural. This is seen in the natural world, widespread and forever.
Yeah.
And obviously also all humans. And this is one thing you might be aware of, Dr. Ray, that reason that a lot of conflict and controversy within the Mormon church in the past few years, because they penalize especially boys so hardcore. You have to admit whether you do it or not. They ask girls as well, but it's not for whatever reason, not as big of a deal as far as the focus on teenage boys masturbating. And so you will be routinely asked if you do. And because of more consciousness and awareness being raised about healthy sexuality in recent years, a lot of people have pushed back on that, because not only should you not be asking boys about this, but the fact that it's not, you have to accept that every boy does this. And so you're just setting them up to lose, and it's setting them up for lots of guilt and shame later. And there's been some pretty brave members of the church who intended to stay in active standing with the church, who have tried to push back against this and got kicked out because the church didn't want to hear it. Animals are doing it. People are doing it. Women, men, everybody is doing it. And when we come back from our commercial break, we're going to talk about the health benefits of it, and also using and masturbation while in and outside of relationships. We'll be right back. A lot of you know that I am a breakup coach, but did you also know that I work one-on-one with singles to maximize their solo chapter of life? My program, Single and Secure, offers customized packages that include things like becoming securely attached, visualization and manifestation for the future, learning to embrace and love your single life, getting ready to date again, self-pleasure, preparing for your next relationship. Let's have a chat to talk about how Single and Secure can add fun and power to your life. Schedule your free intro call using the link at the top of my show notes. Thank you for all of this fun information so far, Dr. Ray. I talk about female self-pleasure, especially a lot on this show. I have lots of kind of masturbatory kinks, actually, which we won't go into today. But I'm really excited to just be covering, just like the basics of masturbation. And something that's not often talked about is the health benefits. And if you'd like, you can kind of maybe toss in there also the maybe emotional or relational benefits. But yeah, let's talk about how this can improve our health. Go for it.
Well, let's start with females. If you're a vagina owner, your masturbatory behavior actually increases the blood flow to your entire genitalia and gives you higher health benefits with respect to your immune system. You're better able to have a healthy vaginal area because you're stimulating on a regular basis.
Okay.
And that's clearly healthy.
Yeah, I mean, also when you rub your skin a certain way, like I use a dry brush on my face quite often because, it stimulates the blood flow. And I have noticed, I mean, I am probably much older than I look. And that is because I'm doing that all the time. And the blood is constantly coming to the surface. And yeah, right. I guess it would be the same for keeping your vag youthful. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. It's blood flow gives the immune system an opportunity to discover and attack pathogens that might be getting into your system or attempting to get into your system.
Awesome.
Because your skin is it's very tough, and it's hard for anything to get in through your skin, but you've got blood vessels right next to the surface within your genitals, especially females. So you want to be sure and keep those healthy and practice a lot, you to make sure that it stays in, because you use it or lose it. Women, there's quite a bit of evidence that women who don't masturbate or who claim they don't or whatever are less likely to have happy sexual relations. Because when you masturbate, you're teaching your body your own sexual response. When you don't masturbate, you forget. Your body forgets. It's like any other skill. If you don't use it, you tend to get worse at it. So you have to keep your body in tune. You keep yourself in tune with your own sexuality through masturbation. And that makes you a better sexual partner. Whether you're male or female, it makes you a better sexual partner. But there's quite a bit of evidence that female masturbation leads to better sexual health and better interpersonal relationships with your partner. Mm-hmm. And women who deny their sexuality, and I want to focus on women for just a while. Women who deny their sexuality or who are embarrassed about their sexuality or about their desire. For example, this is an example I've told many people over the years, but many years ago as a clinician, I had a couple come into me. They were Catholic. Come into me about, and their main complaint was she can't have an orgasm. So we talked for a session or two, and then she complains that her husband can't give her an orgasm. He's feeling embarrassed that he can't give his wife an orgasm.
Give it to her.
So you can see all this. You can see all this coming. And so I finally asked, well, how do you give yourself an orgasm? Can you show your husband how you give an orgasm? And she got all red in the face and embarrassed and said, oh, I can never do that. I can't touch myself. That would be against God's will.
Come on. But an orgasm, no. But giving it to yourself, yes.
So the only way she could have orgasm is if her husband did it. And she wouldn't show her husband because she couldn't touch herself.
Oh, the poor bloke.
Finally, I know after a few sessions, we went into some detail. We talked about it. Her husband was all excited about trying to experiment and everything. One day, they both came into my office, sat down, and they were just beaming. I mean, they were like two different people. Their faces were totally different. And quickly, they said, hey, we got good news for you. And it's okay. What? My wife was able to give herself a masturbatory orgasm recently.
Oh, my God. This is adorable.
And then she showed me how to do it, and I gave her an orgasm. So they were so thrilled that they'd gotten rid of the God bullshit and gotten in touch with their own sexuality.
Oh, and then they shared something. I bet afterwards their mind was blown.
Absolutely, it was blown. This couple, I didn't do anything. That it wasn't. I just encouraged them to explore. Mm-hmm. But in order for them to explore, they had to get over some deeply held beliefs about human sexuality, and that was rooted in the Catholic dogma about you can't masturbate, you can't touch yourself. You're creating a sin. God's watching you. I have another story to tell.
Oh, please. We can just do masturbation stories sometime.
Well, this is not a masturbation story per se.
Okay.
Although, it could lead to that. I dated a woman many years ago. We had a summer fling. She was moving out of town, so when we first met, so we just said, well, let's just have a summer fling. And it was a great time. But we usually met at my house, but occasionally we'd go to her apartment. And one day, this is before cell phones. This is like 1990 or so. I'm in her neighborhood, so I decided to drop in. It wasn't inappropriate or anything. I just decided to drop in. And she was happy to see me. I come into her house. She hugs me, kisses me. She's all excited to see me. And I go into her bedroom, and I notice there's a rosary, there's a crucifix, there's Bibles, there's all sorts of religious stuff around her bedroom.
Okay.
And I'd been there before. I'd never seen this before. So I said, hey, Doris, I'll call her Doris. That wasn't her real name. What's all this? And she said, oh, darn, I put it away when I know you're coming over, because I just can't come with Jesus watching me.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, right. So what I've learned over the years is people are scared of their own sexuality, and they're scared because they've been taught religious dogma about you should be afraid of your body. Your body is your enemy. And by extension, masturbation is an expression of Satan or the devil or evil, or it's a crime against God. Everything I just mentioned are deeply, deeply indoctrinated beliefs into people. And even if people have left a given religion, they oftentimes, they leave the religion, but the religion doesn't leave them. Mm-hmm. So they go into their new life with deeply held beliefs. I've had atheists tell me they're afraid of being a sex addict or a porn addict.
Yeah, or that they feel clueless, or that they feel that they should be exploring things, but they're already married. And these are things that I come upon because I'm an activist in the ex-Mormon community, and I run a support group. And
good.
Yeah. And I'd love to tell you more about it sometime. I hadn't thought to ask this, but it does seem that the tides are turning. I mean, as far as, especially sex toys geared towards women, this is not only like a $1 billion industry. We're talking about it, in pop culture. We're talking about it on TV shows. You can even go to the supermarket and buy vibrators. We have thousands of options. They're very, cute, and people are celebrating at least the sex toy aspect of it. In fact, I was actually a Passion Parties rep when I was in college.
Oh, right.
And I loved it. I'm also a performer. And so I would go into parties and do all the, this whole performance based around the toys. I'm actually thinking of getting back into it here in Denver. But it seems like people are becoming really not just comfortable with this aspect of masturbation, but really rooting it on and celebrating it and having fun with it. What is that about? And do you think that this is just a good sign that things are starting to change?
Well, before we go any farther, I forgot to ask you, should I have taken my dildo down before we started?
Oh my God. He has a suction cup pink dildo on his bookshelf. Oh my goodness. You are the best. I'm so glad we met.
When I wrote my book, Sex and God, I went on book tour, and I ordered about 300 pocket rockets, and I would give them out as prizes when I give a talk. It was a lot of fun, and I had people just dying to get one of them, and some people seemed to like them more than others, of course. But this was 10 or 12 years ago, and let me tell you, I have seen a shift. I have seen a shift, but it's hard to know what the roots of it are. But I think one of the key roots is women have been given permission, going back to the 1980s when Betty Dodson, which you heard me talk about, Betty.
Yeah, and of course I'm familiar with her, but yes, go on. Mm-hmm.
When Betty Dodson started teaching women how to masturbate in her masturbatory parties in her own apartment in New York City, that has spread. And I think slowly but surely, women are giving themselves permission to be who they want to be. And that liberation, I think, is driving a lot of this. At the same time, if women are going to explore their bodies and express themselves sexually, then that means they have to give men permission to do the same thing.
Sure.
Or at least not carry on belief structures. For example, there's long-term beliefs that if you masturbate, you're betraying your marriage.
Yeah, and that's how I was raised. And I was married outside of the church, but very, very young. like on the normal time frame of a normal LDS girl. And I still had it in my mind that this was almost like cheating or betrayal.
Yes, right.
And I feel so bad now because I did not want my husband to masturbate. And when I found out that he did, it was very hard for me. And then actually, this is a side note, but he knowing that I had this hang up about masturbation, sometimes when we wouldn't have sex, he would throw it in my face that had caused him to masturbate. To like kind of guilt me into, it was fucked up, Dr. Ray. Like it was. No, it was messed up.
So you were the cause of him masturbating and committing a sin that you condemned yourself. Oh, yeah, that's all fucked up.
No, it was. But I can just say, like, I understand this belief that somehow that's a betrayal or going outside of the relationship or something that really has anything to do with you. But yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Well, if you look at it from this perspective, that no matter what, you are never going to be perfectly aligned sexually with any partner. I want sex today. You don't want sex today. You can't have sex today. I can't have sex. We're always going to be out of sync to some degree. So if one person is horny as hell and the other person is sick, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
All right. You could masturbate. You could go out and find an outside sex partner. There's lots of possible options. So we need to give ourselves permission to be who we are within the boundaries and agreements that we have for our particular relationship, whether it's formal Christian marriage or Mormon marriage or Islamic marriage. I don't care, but you have certain agreements there. But
and
what
in poly relationships as well. This is a poly-friendly show. I'm polyamorous.
Yep.
Though it's not. I mean, monogamy is also respected on this show, but I do want to say a lot of people don't understand that within most non-monogamous relationships, those agreements also exist.
Yeah. I've been poly for 25 years.
Yeah,
I love
loved
it.
finding that out, though I guess I had kind of assumed. But by the end of the presentation, when you were chatting about being non-monogamous, I was like, hell yes, go Dr. Ray.
Well, anyway, we're being forced into a one-size-fits-all ideology when you're religious. And it doesn't really matter what religion, especially if it's a patriarchal religion. Now, we do know that there used to be religions, and still are, but they're not as well-known, religions that didn't push this narrative on people. But that was in hunter-gatherer societies, or it was, thousands of years ago when gods were creating the world through masturbatory ejaculations. Yeah. So part of my talk, and I don't know if you want to go there, was to talk about where masturbation fits within a relationship framework.
Let's end with that, actually.
Okay.
So yeah, let's definitely. And then I'm just letting you know, I think I will be inviting you back on to just do an episode on using your sexual energy wisely. But for now, let's, definitely go into the relationship aspect of things and where it fits or doesn't fit. Thank you. I'd love that.
Okay. Well, part of the reason that motivated me to give that talk was because I get so many people who are concerned about their masturbation interrupting or interfering with their relationships. And this comes from women and from men. I think I've heard it more from men, of course, but it happens to women as well. And what I hear is, when I question them, I hear them expressing a lot of shame and guilt about masturbating, but then they do it anyway. And in my book, The God Virus, I talk about a phenomena I think explains this behavior pretty darn well, and it's called the guilt cycle. Religion teaches you what to be guilty of, and that the only way you can get out of that guilt is to confess your sins or go to a priest or, read the Bible, go to something. You got to do something. So religion says you can't masturbate. It'll make the baby Jesus cry. So you're
the baby Jesus. He never grew up.
So
oh my God, that's so creepy also.
So you masturbate, then you feel guilty. Now, what do? You go back to church, you go to confession, you read your Bible, something like that, and you get your sins forgiven. My sins are forgiven. I'm relieved. I'm not going to hell now. And then that cycle continues until you get horny again. And you get horny, and then you find out, give in, and you masturbate. Now you got to. So what this does, it doesn't stop you from masturbating or having sex or looking at porn. What it does, it makes you feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
And then when you feel guilty about something, you have to go back to church. So this guilt cycle keeps you infected with the church ideology. That's the purpose of guilt and shame, is to keep you infected with the thing that taught you the guilt and shame.
And engaged, infected. And
absolutely. Mormons express their guilt and shame different than Catholics express their guilt and shame. And here's the thing. No Mormon goes to the Catholic Church and confesses their sins to a priest. No Catholic goes to a Muslim imam and confesses their sins.
Well, Mormons also have a disdain for the Catholic Church.
But what I'm saying is none of these religions confess their sins to somebody else. Yeah. They only confess their sins to the church that taught them the guilt and shame in the first place. That's an important thing to realize. You are a Mormon, whether you like it or not. You have Mormon shame and guilt. I have evangelical Christian shame and guilt, and they're different. Maybe not a lot different, but they clearly are different. I never had to tell my elder that I masturbated. Nobody made
and
me
we
do
would
that.
not only have to, I mean, if you didn't, I remember times also when I would have sexual relations when I was in high school, and it would happen. And of course, in the moment, I'm loving it. You know, I'm a normal teenage girl with a libido, but then, you know, even as soon as the next day, just feeling like sick to your stomach. The only thing you can think about is when you're going to be able to confess. You cannot think about anything else. And then you go and like voluntarily tell them, and you must.
Yeah.
And then that's a whole other, what they put you through after. But yes, feeling that it is the only way to move forward if you engage in these sorts of things.
Right. So I want your listeners to think of that as the guilt cycle. It's a cycle that brings you back to church, You are going to be a human being. You're going to express your sexuality. And when you do normal human being things, you're going to be forced to come back to church and confess your sins or deal with the shame and guilt that you were taught by that particular church. So we were looking at where this all fits into relationships. And while we're not always in sync with each other, what we need to do is make sure we have some level of synchronicity between two people. And that means sexless marriages or relationships that start out with sex as the motivator. In most romantic relationships clearly are based on sex and hormones and the things that happen when we stimulate each other sexually. And what I see all too often is people who go through that first 2 to 4 years of new relationship energy, which the poly people are all about. And I love it.
I don't know why it's become a poly thing, but
well, because they're the ones that coined the term.
Okay.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way our species finds each other and mates. If we didn't have new relationship energy, we would not reproduce. It's that simple. You have to have that come together, be in love with each other, have this hormones flowing, and you need to keep it going as a species for about 4 years, because that's how long it takes to have the baby, wean the baby, and the baby be able to walk on its own before the mother has the next baby. Because you're walking, if you're a hunter-gatherer society, you're walking all over the place, hunting roots and animals or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's built right into our humanity. But after 4 years, the NRE drops off. It seems to drop off pretty quickly for women. But it also drops off for men. There's a joke, the most important or the best testosterone suppressor is marriage.
I agree with that. Like, leave it out, people. Come on.
If you're
going to be fine on your own. You're fine without the contract. I strongly believe. But
so what keeps people stimulated oftentimes is is the excitement, is the adventure, is the chase. And it's true for both men and women. And what I see is some men and some women, a significant proportion, not all, but for sure, but almost a majority, find that after about 4 years, they lose interest or lose the kind of interest they used to have in sex. Sometimes they miss that, and that leads oftentimes to cheating, because I want that stimulation, but my partner's not having sex with me anymore or isn't being enthusiastic. But it certainly leads to masturbatory behavior, whether it's cheating or not. It leads to masturbation, and I'm okay with that. People have different levels of libido. There's nothing wrong with that. What the problem is people letting their libido go down without being aware of it, without challenging that idea. Mm-hmm. What I think couples need to be sure and do, if you want to stay in a relationship, you can't ignore your partner's sexual needs and desires, male or female. And it sounds like, oh, well, I hear people say you're just trying to promote one side or the other. I'm not. I'm trying to promote both sides. Unless you synchronize with each other on a regular basis, you will start falling apart emotionally. You'll withdraw from each other. And people need intimacy if they're going to be in a truly useful, healthy relationship. So I'm a big advocate of making sure you make an appointment, a schedule, do something to make sure you have sex with your partner, usually about twice a week, certainly minimum once a week. The research actually shows minimum once a week to maintain a healthy relationship. And I don't care how old you are. That's what you have to do.
I agree. Yeah, it gets in your head, I would imagine, too, when you start going weeks without it. And then I think it could kind of snowball.
Well, it doesn't. By getting in your head, I want to explore that a little bit. What it does, it leads to the feelings of rejection. Uh-huh. If I approach you and you reject me for sex this week, okay, I can understand that. You're sick. You're not feeling good. You had a tough day at work. But when you had a tough day at work, you're sick, you're not in the mood for a month, then the partner starts feeling that you're no longer interested in them sexually. And that is incredibly destructive to a relationship that got started with sex as its foundation. And I don't care who you are, if you cannot say that, okay, I'm going to do sex for 4 years, then I'm not going to do it again.
Do sex.
That's crazy. I had a client this many years ago. They had 4 kids together, she and her husband, and they were very, very religious. After 4 years, four babies over about a 10-year time period, she told her husband, not having sex anymore. That's the end of sex in our relationship. And if I catch you going outside the marriage, I'll divorce you. And within a year, she had divorced him because he did go and have sex. Now, I've seen the same thing happen. It's not just a male-female thing. I don't want anybody to think I'm taking sides here, because I'm not. Both parties create these problems for themselves. Mm-hmm. But if, for example, that woman had realized, oh, sexual relationship is really important for this person who's the father of my 4 kids. And by the way, he was a pretty damn good father. Even after divorce, he still was a good father. Mm-hmm. But if she'd said, I need to keep engaged intimately with him, or this, why are we together if we're not intimate? What's the purpose of this marriage? We have 4 kids. We can raise kids without having to be in the same house together. I know that because I did that. I got divorced when my kids were.
Do, and I really want to say, if the marriage is, if the relationship has run its course, that is an option that you should be able to freely explore.
Right, and when people take their marriage vows, they say something. We're going to do this forever. Okay. But the other side of that coin is, if you're going to do it forever, then that requires incredible maintenance.
Yes.
You have to be intentional. And the most important intentional thing you can do is have regular sexual relationships with each other. And if you can't, don't condemn your partner for having sex with themselves.
Well, yeah, that's what I wanted to kind of circle back to. Is I love making the dates, and I'd love to have you back on to talk maybe more about sexual intentionality. But when it comes to masturbation, What place does that hold inside of a relationship? How can we encourage each other? Do we, talk openly about it? Where does it really fit in to a committed relationship?
Well, actually, I think a person who's intentional and mindful about their masturbatory behavior is being highly considerate and respectful of their partner. Because what I see is my partner is sick today. I don't even ask to have sex. I don't even hint at it. I go masturbate.
Okay.
That is incredibly respectful. I'm not putting any pressure. I'm not making my partner feel bad about it. I'm just taking care of myself. And that's what I want people to realize is masturbation can be one of the most respectful things you do for your partner.
Oh my God.
Not with your partner.
Yes, that is going to be a graphic. That's going to be a pulled quote. Thank you.
Good,
Say that
good.
one
All
more
right.
time, Dr. Ray. I loved it.
Masturbation can be one of the most respectful things you do for your partner, especially when they're not feeling sick or otherwise not able to enjoy the sexual relationship.
Yes.
And at the same time, you give your partner, I don't like this notion of giving anything. I don't own you, so I can't give you permission.
Or give you an orgasm.
Yeah, right. So I make sure my partner knows I have no objections to them to take care of themselves. That's not a big problem. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to guiltify them. I'm not going to drop down into religious shaming about them masturbating. The second thing is that masturbation isn't, you're gonna be horny when your partner's not. When I was younger, I had an incredible sex drive. There were very few women that could keep up with me. And I didn't, and I'm not bragging because I don't have that anymore. I'll just tell you that. I mean, I've still got a good sex drive, but it's nothing like what I was when I was even 50 years old. But what would not shame or in any way make my partners feel bad because they weren't, quote, satisfying me. We would have sex 2-3 times a day, maybe. I'd still be horny. I'd still want to have more sex. Well, it would be disrespectful to push myself on them a third or fourth or fifth time if I was that horny that day. So I would satisfy myself. And that is respectful to your partner.
That's actually kind of cool. Very cool. Not kind of, very.
Yeah. And if you're a woman and you've had an orgasm with your partner, but he goes limp, he's not interested, he wants to go to sleep, you can still masturbate. Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can masturbate while he lays there beside you, or you can go to another room and masturbate, or perhaps kick him out and let I don't care, but your satisfaction is not tied to your partner. If you look at it mathematically, you're probably going to masturbate 10 or 15 times as much as you actually have intercourse.
Oh my God. I've never thought of it like that.
Yeah. How many times are you going to masturbate in your lifetime versus how many times you're going to have intercourse with somebody? Mm-hmm. That's a huge difference.
Yeah. And maybe not when you're in NRE, because certainly that wouldn't be the ratio for me now. But yeah, in a lifetime, you're right.
In a lifetime. Because I mean, there was times when I had no sex partner for maybe 6 months. What am I going to do? Well, that entire time counts as masturbatory activity, and it's against the non-intercourse activity I didn't have, so it's 150 to 0 is what it amounts to during that 6 months or whatever. And so people need to get comfortable with that. Where the problems start coming in is when you lose your mindfulness about what you're doing and you end up watching porn and masturbating to the extent that you no longer have energy to satisfy or engage with your partner.
Okay.
That's where the problems come in. And that's where people come to me or other psychologists that I know, and they say, I think I may be a porn addict, or my husband is masturbating too much and he didn't want to have sex with me anymore. Both sides of that coin are there. And I'm just saying we need to be intentional and realize that, okay, you have energy for 3 orgasms today. but your partner's only got energy for one. Have your sex, enjoy each other, and go satisfy yourself the other 2 times if you want to.
Yeah, I love it. And this all comes from already being experienced and okay with it on both partners' sides.
Yeah, exactly. But the key is you've got to connect with each other on a regular basis sexually, or you're going to lose each other. Here's another case of you use it or you lose it.
Okay.
If you don't use your mutual sexuality, you will lose your mutual sexuality. You can quote me on that one too.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. Definitely,
Yes.
I will. Definitely, I will.
Yeah,
I know
and
that people want. I'll have lots of single listeners, but then also lots of people who are very intentional about doing things their way, which is why it's called Sex and the Solo Girl, because we are, people who do things differently with ourselves and others.
Right. Yeah. And if you feel comfortable, I had a Catholic partner many years ago that got over her Catholic guilt. I was very happy about that. But
Not the same one with the rosary in her bedroom.
No,
not
totally
Doris,
different.
not Doris.
No, not Doris. Totally different one. But she had an incredible. She had one way of having an orgasm. Let's just put it that way. And I could not. No matter what I did, I couldn't seem to get it right, which is fine. She needed a really big, really heavy vibrator.
Oh my!
I don't have that in me.
That doesn't do it for me. That's painful. Okay, cool. Interesting though.
So we would have sex. We would enjoy. She really likes sex, and we had lots and lots of sex, of course. But ultimately, we had to get the vibrator out, and either I'd have to hold the vibrator, or she would have to hold the vibrator. Whatever we were feeling that day, and we had a lot of fun giving her the orgasm. But my penis was not in her when it was happening. Sometimes we'd try that, and it might work, but that just wasn't the way she got off. And once she got over her shame about that and opened herself up and just said, hey, let's try that, then it was like off to the races. It made
that's lovely.
We already had a good sex life, but what I didn't realize is nothing I was going to do was going to give her the orgasm. And it took a while for me to recognize that, because I could usually do pretty well no matter what partner I had. But that was one partner I couldn't. And we were together for many years. Or we had, we were polyamorous, of course, but.
Of course.
Yeah, anyway.
Well, yes, thank you for sharing that. And then we're talking about an overall embracing this. And it's not even like we have to just be going out there like, yay, masturbation, everyone do it. It's just kind of integrating it into a normal, healthy sex life with yourself and with others. And yes, it is great to see all the vibrators out there and everybody posting on social media about their favorite one. But it's also, kind of like I said earlier, almost taking it for granted and just holistic integration of it.
Yeah.
And having more talks like this is one way to do that. I am so excited to drop this episode. It's just going to be called Masturbation with Dr. Ray. Everyone's gonna love it. And yes, if you would like to come on and talk about using your sexual energy, I would love to have you back.
Sure.
Thank you just so much for this. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Religious guilt and shame is something that has become there's an enormous spotlight being put on it right now. And I don't think I know that just because of my role in the ex-Mormon community. I just think it's become a really, really, really hot topic. And it's very important to have people
I think what's happening is people that grew up in the purity culture in the 90s have now come into their own as adults, and they're realizing, wow, that was a bunch of bullshit that I got my brain programmed with. And I want to get out of that. I think that's why that's part of the reason why the spotlight is so strong right now, I think.
Kind of seeing the potential that can offer you for the first time, and being sad that you're later into life and realizing it, being very excited that you're finally realizing it. Also, I feel a little emotional, but also confusion it brings up a lot in quotes to be going through this in your 30s, 40s, 50s. And we need people like you who are normalizing it.
Good. I'm all about normalizing.
Thank you so much. And damn it, we didn't even get to talk about Betty Page yet. We'll have to keep the. Well, I actually went down a Betty Page rabbit hole after the talk because.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, going online and learning about her life, and I'm continuing on, but maybe we'll talk about Betty Page, or maybe we can do a pinups episode because I'm also a Marilyn Monroe fan.
Yeah, right.
Oh, big time. All right, Dr. Ray. Well, I'm really, really blessed that I got to be a sponsor for the Shameless Sexuality Conference. Very blessed to have been introduced to Janice Selby and by extension, you. So, she's just started something so wonderful, and the networking and getting everyone's work out there is something that is a real gift that she's given us. And so shout out to Janice for being a pioneer in this area. Yeah,
I don't know anybody else is doing anything like what Janice is doing.
Yeah. So also, everyone wonderful. Go check out Divorcing Religion, and also so she has the Divorcing Religion podcast, which we've both been on, and then of course the Shameless Sexuality Conference. Get involved.
Good.
All right, Dr. Ray.
Can I throw one thing out that just kind of an unpaid advertisement? Because I always try to plug Recovery from Religion before.
Oh yes,
when I'm on a podcast.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, I just like to let people know that we're available if you're dealing with religious shame or guilt around your sexuality. You can call us. We got free. All our services are free, and you can chat with somebody. You can talk about masturbating. You can talk about relationships. Whatever. If it's in any way related to religion, we're here to help you. And our agents are trained to be non-judgmental and open about, no matter if you're LGBTQ, I don't care. If you are welcome, and we want to help. So go to recoveryfromreligion.org.
It is such important work that you are doing. And anybody out there who relates to any of what we're saying right now, remember, there are resources for you. Recovering from Religion, that is what they exist to do.
One of the more interesting things is we're not just recovering from religion, you're recovering from religious sexuality. Mm-hmm. And my thesis is you can leave religion, but you then have to leave religious sexuality. And that can be even harder.
It can be hard. It is entirely possible. You can also kind of get to a point in your deconstruction where you actually start to get excited about it, but definitely get support. Dr. Ray is there for you. Janice Selby is there for you. I am there for you. This is going to be the best thing that you've ever done. And your life is about to completely change for the better if you can be intentional about allowing it to be. Masturbation. What a wonderful time we've had. And I will see everyone next week. I hope that you had fun with the episode as well. Thanks, Dr. Ray.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to Sex and the Solo Girl with Janice Formichella, the podcast for those who want to add more flavor to their relationships with themselves and others. If you liked today's episode, make sure to head over to Instagram and let her know. See you next week.